Good afternoon, folks. I'd like to start today by taking any questions you may have on the previous assignments. So, I notice when a majority of the students don't turn in an assignment, and if you're stuck, I assign these assignments right outside your comfort zone so that you have to figure it out. And if that involves talking to me and having something explained, then that's normal. So you need to contact me if you're stuck. We're running out of time. We have 1, 2, 3, 4 weeks after this week for you to finish the projects, and you have to finish all the projects to finish the course. So if you're stuck on one of the you can't move on until you finish the previous projects because everything builds. You need to talk to me now before it's too late. Otherwise you'll have to take the course again, and I don't want you to have to lose that time. Waiting for my workspace to update. So alright, it's probably going to close everything. So I finally put this off too long. When you're working on this, if it ever asks you to update the client, you should. So the different updates will add things like blocking vulnerabilities in your connection, improving the efficiency of the connection. All good things. So, while that's working, let's take a look at what we have. So we have the first assignment here. Let me just check something. I want to give away. Let's add a blank scene. Okay. So I can check something. We have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 students. Started with a lot more, but due to the state we're all in, I'm sure some people needed to rethink the courses that they're going to do. Alright. And so there are 6 people. Let's see. Okay, and so the first assignment here, we have everybody's done. The next assignment, this will be easier if I go here. Web Caesar, we have only 2 people have submitted the first real assignment. So if you are in the category of not having turned this in, you need to contact me. It is not too late to catch up. And then we had user sign up after that, and we have 3 people submitted that. So I don't know who submitted it without finishing the previous one, because this one's a lot more difficult. Build a blog is due in 9 days. And that one, no one has turned in yet, which is fine. And then we have, let's see who did the Hello Flask. I think a lot of people did that one. 5, okay. And blogs will be our final project, and that's due December 15th, which is, I think, Thursday of finals week. No, it's Tuesday, because I need time to grade them. Okay. So, a lot of people still need to make up their assignments. So if you're caught up, you're good. If you're not, you can see a lot of people haven't turned these in. So I've only been meeting with 1 student for this course, so you need to ask for help. Just shoot me an email, and we'll set up a time to do a Zoom meeting, and I can answer all your questions, so that way you can complete the assignments. Okay. When the course only involves a handful of projects, each project has a lot involved, so don't put it off, because you will not be able to finish it in the last week or on the last day. Okay. I think this is ready now. Do I have a link to the live streams? I do here. Okay. So we're going to take a look today at, I think we finished all the parts we need for user sign up, did we? Let's double check that. Screen is all dusty. Well, that's not a good sign. Let's see. I wonder if it's going to make me restart my computer. Probably. Oh, yeah, okay. Let's do an Alt F4. That doesn't work, so Control Shift Escape. We will close this. Hopefully that doesn't create a bunch of problems for me. Okay. So I'm going to go ahead and restart, and then I'll start up the stream again. So be thinking about if you have any questions. You can say, on so-and-so assignment, I'm stuck. And then I'll figure out where you're stuck, and we can go over that. All right, see you in a second. It say it's an hour and 12 minutes. Okay. Okay. I'm back. Alright, so this should work now. Cross your fingers. Ooh, that was fast. Cool. Alright, so we need to all right. We need to continue on. So let's go back to the course material. And we can get rid of all of this. Okay, so we made it all the way here to user sign up. Oh no, we've been there for a while actually. We are down to build a blog, where we worked with object relational mapping so that we could create a web app that will take data from the user, store it in a database, and then pull that data out when it builds a page. Okay. That sounds really simple, right? But it had a lot of steps, so you can watch the previous videos if you want to see how to do that. We're going to move on to this next part that talks about user objects. So how do we keep track of a user, authentication, and how do we work with multiple tables in a database for a web app using SQL Alchemy and PyMySQL and MariaDB. Okay. So you should go to the course materials for this section, and in the previous, before the last project, you are working on a Get It Done app, parts 1 through 4. So if you haven't done that, make sure you check that out. And then here are parts 5 through 9, which discuss the new topics like how to create a user model, all of this stuff, using sessions to keep track of people as they're logged in, and relationships in a database. So that's what we're going to focus on today, but you need to watch these videos and build this. It's step-by-step guided and explains the different parts, so that way you can apply it in the assignment. All right, what is this? So after watching those videos, you should be able to answer these questions. So read the question to yourself afterwards. If you can't answer it, you need to do some research on those parts. Okay. So I recommend doing that before you use this video to do the flick list studio. But that's what I'm going to do today. We're going to take a look at flick list 7 and update the flick list app to include all the things we talked about. A user class to create user objects, so that way we can store users and passwords so they can log into our site. Okay. Alright, some various different features here. We will also basically kind of control the where the user can go on the site, whether they're logged in or whether they're not logged in. If they make a mistake, send them to the right spot. If they try to get somewhere they're not supposed to, send them back to the, either give them an error message or send them back to the front page. All right. So fairly straightforward things we're trying to do. Okay, so first we need to grab the let's start with the walkthrough 7 branch. Alright, I'm going to stay logged into MariaDB here. Double check that it's actually still running. So I'm going to add another terminal tab. And this one will be for general Linux commands. So let's see what's in there. What was I going to do? I was going to check. Oh, we were going to change the branch to walkthrough 7. So let's do git branch to see where we were. So we did up through Studio 5. I think I asked you guys to do Studio 6 on your own. Let's see. Because I did not post that. Or did we? Yeah, we did this. Yeah, we did this. Okay. So, Studio 7. So start with walkthrough 7. Do you remember the git command for changing branches? It's git checkout and then the name. Okay, so now it's saying you can't switch to this branch because you have uncommitted changes to the current branch that you're on, which is Studio 5. Okay, so I think what I did was I just made the changes to Studio 5 instead of Studio 6. So to be able to switch, I need to commit those changes. So we can do git add dot, and then we can do git commit -m added stuff from Studio. Uh-oh. Internet hiccup. When that happens, I find that it's simpler to just disconnect and reconnect rather than waiting. Alright, so git commit m added Studio 6 stuff. Alright. And now let's see if we can check out. Alright, and then we can see git branch. We're now on walkthrough 7. So it's not mad anymore that we forgot to commit that. So if you ever see that error or get that error, just understand it has to do with version control and it's trying to help you. It's trying to prevent you from losing work. Okay. So from here, let's go ahead and open up the code for flick list 7, or walkthrough 7. All right, I'm going to close all of this first and do it again. Okay, let me close each individual file, I guess. There's a close all. Oh, I thought there was. Maybe I can right click. Close all. There it is. Okay, so now we have nothing in there. Should open this folder. Okay, there we go. And then let's take a look at, here are our templates. Here's our main.py. So let's see what's in here. So this should have everything we added, or we're supposed to add in Studio 6. So let's start up the server. Here's my general one. This one is for running the server, and this one is for accessing the database. Oh, I was going to make sure the database was running. So how do we do that? We do service MariaDB status. Okay, it's running. So if yours is dead, make sure you do a service MariaDB start. Okay. If it's already running, don't do that, especially if you have a tab open here. You'll have to reconnect, I'm pretty sure. Okay, so now we can run the server. So if you want to stop the server from running, you hit Control-C, and then we'll do Python main.py. So now it's running, and let's open it up in the browser. And it says, can't connect to the server on localhost. So, what do you think we need to fix? Where do we tell the app to connect to the database? Which file? So in main.py, we have this line here, and let's go ahead and make it easier to read. Line 7 on here is all the connection information for connecting to the database. Okay, so you need to change this to whatever you set up. So I changed the password to flick list. This MariaDB uses port 3306, and I think that's all I need to change. So remember, we have username, password, and then this is the location that you're connecting, and then here's the port, and then this is the name of the database. Okay, so with that in mind, we need to rerun the app so that it can have the code to connect properly. Okay, so that's running, and now we can try refreshing. All right, fixed. So first thing we need to do is check that everything worked. So let's click I watched it on movie name. Okay, that seemed to work, and then it removed it from the list here. Okay. Wonder how it did that. We'll check the code for that. And I want to add a movie. What was that movie we just watched? That was really good. Oh, Aeronauts. That's what it's called? Yeah. Okay, so we'll add that. Make sure it works. Alright, there it is. Now let's make sure it's not messing up the database. So we'll go into our terminal that's connected to MariaDB. Okay, and so for the sake of showing you everything, let's pretend I need to reconnect to the database with the terminal. So how do I do that? Well, we do mysql -u root -p. Alright, and that will ask me to log in. The root user has no password, so enter. Now we're in, but we don't have a database selected, so we need to do use, and then the name of the database. If you have multiple databases, you can use show databases. Don't forget to end your lines with a semicolon. So we have all of these, flick list, and then I think that's the only one I actually made, but these other ones are either put in there for an example or are holding the settings. So to switch to flick list, we do use flick list, semicolon, and now we are in the right place. We can do show tables. We only have one table called movie, and we can look in there by doing the command to pull the records out of a table. So this is SQL, which is select, and then you list your columns. And so I want all the columns. I'm going to put select star, that represents grab every field. Fields, columns, attributes. You'll hear them called all of those things. And then we select which table from that we want the information pulled from, which is movie, and then semicolon. And so in here we have the movie name. Okay, but before we only had the ID and the name. Did I have that here? Oh no, we did create a watch generating, didn't we? Okay. And so when we hit, remember, you don't want to delete records out of a database unless they're entered in error. Otherwise, you will lose the data, and anything relying on that data will break, and you will have incomplete records. So when we crossed off the movies on the watch list, it stopped displaying them on the home page, but all it did was flip the 0 to a 1 in the watched field. So if it has a 1 next to it, that means it's been watched. If it's 0, it has not been watched yet. Okay. And then we had a star rating system, and I was storing these as integers, so it knows how many stars to print out. Okay, so I don't think we did I can't remember if we did the watched thing. So where is that happening? Well, which route did we start at? We started at the index route, so the /. So we need to go find that. Here it is. App route / so this is for the home page or the front page of the site. And it is going to render the template edit. So that's the form for entering in new movies or crossing them off. And inside of there, so it's in the templates here. And remember, when you're using Jinja, you have to have a folder named templates, lowercase, to access these. So let's check edit.html. And so here's that for loop that's pulling all the records out of the database. And where can we see it doing that? So let me show you here. How this is created from a for loop of data pulled from the database. So we have to go to, let's go back to the index route here. And on the return, we're rendering that template and we're passing in watch list, which is the return value of get current watch list. Okay, and so that is defined up here. If I select something else, what is this? Oh, this is something I must have added, and that's something I deleted. So we can do get current watch list. And then let's see if this works. Go to definition. Nope. Okay, maybe this. Might not be set up properly. There we go. So if you select the name, actually you don't even have to select it. If you want to know how a function works, this is what's nice about coding text editors. There's little shortcuts like that. So if I just right click on this and go to definition, or I can just click in it like this and hit F12, it'll bring me to the code for that. And so here is where we're getting it out of the database. So when I visit the site, let's say I'm just a user. I visit the site, and that will bring me to the homepage route, the /. Inside of that, it will return the edit.html template, which includes a for loop of movies pulled from the database using this command right here. Movie.query.filter watched equals false. And so the way you translate this is a way to pull records out of the database and store them as objects. So we're grabbing movie records, and so we want to run a query that will filter by this field of watched where it's equal to false. Now, in MariaDB, I believe the Boolean field or bool field is just a tiny int data type, which I think is the smallest integer data type, so it takes up the least amount of space, and 1 represents true, 0 represents false. Okay, and so here we're checking if only grab the records where watched is false. So here's those 3. All right, and then this is saying grab all of the records that meet this filter. So it'll say, all right, go to the movie table, grab all the records that have a watched equals false. And then it'll return that down where we called this. So if we right click on this and go to references, it will show us everywhere where this function is being called. So we can skip down here, close this. Whoops. Let's try it again. Go to references. There we go. Double click it. And that shows here's where it's being called. So that will take the list of those objects, store that list in this variable, watch list, and then that will be passed to this template, edit.html, as this variable here, watch list. And so inside of here, we have this part right here, for movie in watch list. So we are creating a for loop that will go through every item in the watch list. So this looks very similar to Python. So we're creating a variable called movie that will grab each value out of the list each time the loop iterates. And so from the list we passed in, and then we are pulling out the properties of the object. So each movie, we're going to use its name. Let's say we also wanted to see the rating. We could do this. We have this as a list item right now. And so we can just stick this at the end of, after the movie name, we can just put a space, put the words rating, colon, space. Okay. Movie dot rating. Do we call it rating or ratings? Rating, okay. And so let's see if that shows up. First we have to save, and then we check if the server caught that change. I'm not actually sure if it did, so I'm going to close it with Control-C and rerun it, fresh. We can open the link. And so now we can see the rating there. Now, if you haven't watched the movie, you wouldn't have a rating there. So I just wanted to show you that you could pull out more of the properties of the object, which are the names of the fields from the database. So you could grab the name, you could grab the ID, you can grab whether it's been watched or not, and you can grab the rating. All you have to do is change or use the reference here and pull out whatever you want. Okay, so it doesn't make sense to put rating here, so I'm going to take that off. Save it again. And then fresh. Okay. Don't forget to save. Control S, shortcut for save. Alright, so we have that. And so the reason we were looking here is because when we add it, we want to know what happens. Well, down here is the add form. Okay, so looking at this, which part tells me what's going to happen when I press the button? So it has a submit button, it has a text box, and so something's going to happen when I hit the submit button. What is that? Where do I look to find that? It's right here. Action equals add. So in here, you can put the route that you want to go to. And so when I hit submit, it'll go to that route. Okay, so now we go to the add route. I'm going to hit Control F / add. Find that quickly. Okay, so inside of the function, it grabs the name we typed in. here it says if they hit the button without typing something, it is going to bring you back to the home page, because that's a /, and it's going to add this query parameter. So after the question mark, you can add query parameters or variables that you can pass through the URL. And we're setting an error variable with the value of the error string, which is up here, which says please specify the movie you want to add. So if they forget to add one, we can tell them what the error is. Okay, and then here we did this last time. We added the check for horrible movies, and then down here we're building the object that we're going to use to submit to the database. So we're saying, okay, create a variable called movie, and we're going to call the movie constructor to create a new object, and we're going to pass in the name they typed in the text box. And so if you don't remember, we created this movie class up here. Okay, and so remember, this is what we're doing is the object part of object relational mapping. This is how the Python code recognizes the information from the database. Instead of just having, a table of information, it creates it as an object. All right, and so down here is the constructor method. And remember, in these methods, methods of an object in Python. So here we have this init method, and here we have this repr method. I'm guessing this returns a string. We'll test that out. But here, when we create a new movie object, we have to provide a name that will get stored in the name property we've defined here, which is an object of db.column, and the data type is db.string120, so it's a 120 character limit string in the object. And watched is a Boolean. The rating is a string of 20 characters. Okay. So anyway, we were creating that down here. No, not there. Shift F12. Okay, so Shift F12. It's one of these. Here it is. Movie equals movie, new movie name. So we're taking the new movie name, which is pulled from the form data. Okay, so we're setting the new movie name. We're just pulling it out of the form data. And we're using the movie constructor, passing in the name. That will create the object. Then we're doing db.session.addMovie. So what that does is let me show you so you can have a better understanding. Okay, so we're talking about how the object relational mapper works. So we'll have a box here that represents how the object relational mapper works. We'll label that up here. ORM, object relational mapper. So inside of that we have Python code. We have, so this is the web app, which is written using Python code. We have the database, which uses SQL and tables, rows, and fields. Okay. And so the object relational mapper can take information from the Python code and convert it into SQL statements to insert the records. Now, the way that works is we have an intermediate step here, and let's call it the ORM session. Okay. We'll look at another thing called sessions in the next part, so we're going to label this the ORM session. And so when we're adding things in, to the database from the web app, it has to go through this ORM session to get into the database. And that is a commit. So right here, db.session.add, we're adding the movie object that we created into the session. Okay, so that is from the app, we're adding the new object into the session. Okay, and we can add a lot of stuff into the session, but that doesn't add it to the database. Not until we do this, we actually commit the session, none of the changes will be reflected in the database. So when you do commit, it translates the objects into insert statements and runs that on the database. So I thought there was a fly buzzing on my phone, but it's my erratic mouse movements. Okay. So that's how that works. So to get it in, you have to commit. Now, you don't have to worry so much about getting information out. Python handles that for you, or Flask does anyway. SQL Alchemy does. So with that, it just goes straight. If we pull information out, it will go right into the app. And then the app has it as a list of objects, and they can pull the information. And so that's the basic flow of communicating with the database using this object relational mapper of SQL Alchemy with Flask. All right, and so like I said, once this happens, it's now in the database. So you can actually see this. We have the debug output for SQL. And so here's the web server. This is the output. So this is the last thing that happened. Okay, I loaded the page. So I did a GET request for the home page. When I opened the browser and went to the page, it did a GET request. So if I refresh and refresh again, we can see here's the get for that, here's the get for when I refreshed it the first time, here's the get for when I refreshed it the second time. All right, and then we can see the SQL command that was run on the database to pull out that list that was built by the object relational mapper, and so that is this command right here. Select all of the fields, so here they have them listed. Select movie.id, this is the table name, this is the field name, and then don't worry so much about this unless you've taken the database class. This is how you set an alias for a field. Okay, and so it does that, it grabs every field explicitly from the movie database, and then here's our filter where movie.watched equals false. And so if we run this, let's copy it, and we can actually run that in the database. Don't forget your semicolon. And now we have, this is what the web app is getting when it runs that query. It's going to get this information as an object with these properties. It's going to get all three of these as separate objects in a list. Each of those objects will have these properties. There will be 3 in the list, so we can use a for loop to go through it. Okay. The next thing is when we insert. So here, when we click the button, we already followed the path through from the homepage route to the edit.html, and clicking the button there calls the add route, and that brings us to the page that says blah 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 was added. Okay, so let's see what happens in the web server. So let's clear this, Control C, start up, and then I'm going to clear this. Okay, now I'm going to run the server. Okay, so we haven't had any requests yet. Let's add a movie. What's that movie you watched recently that's really good, but it wasn't Aeronauts? I could just put. What movie did I watch recently? Oh, what's the Borat movie called? Borat. Yeah, it's too long. Okay, anyway, Borat. Borat. Okay. We'll add it. It says Borat has been added to your watch list. Let's see what this web server did to communicate to the database. So we want to do an insert. We need to see the insert into. Here it is. Insert into movie. That's a movie table. We're going to insert into the name, watched, and rating fields because we don't want to insert into the ID field. Why not? Why don't we want to explicitly choose the ID for that? That's because in our movie class we set the ID field as a primary key, as an integer with a primary key, and I believe the object relational mapper must automatically auto-increment IDs. So we don't want to put those in, we want the computer to choose so we don't use the same one. Okay, so anyway, where was that? Here is, we're inserting that. And the values are pulled from these references. Okay, so we can copy this SQL, go to the database, and let's try doing it manually. Okay, so for our values, we need to put that's weird. My display's messing up. Curious what it would say. Okay. So instead of rating, we'll insert the number 2. Instead of watched, we'll put 0 because we're adding it to our watch list. And the name was Borat, but we already have that in there now, so let's do a different one. We'll put the movie Rubber. Don't forget your semicolon. Oh, whoops. Remember, when you're inserting string values, you need to put them in double quotes or it'll think it's a reference to something else. Alright, it says, okay, one row affected. So let's pull out select star from movie. And we can see that in there now. We added this manually using the database. Using the same query that our object relational mapper built. We didn't have to write the query. All we had to do was create the object, add it to the session, and commit. So it saves you a lot of time writing queries to get information in there and get information out, because it does all that for you. You just have to know the on. There is a problem though. What is wrong with these two records that I use the app for? They have null as the value in the field. So what that means is when we insert a record, it's not putting any value in the rating, which in this case is okay for now, but if we wanted to calculate like the average rating of our movies, this might cause a problem. So let's try, we'll fix that later if we need to, if I have time to do that example. Alright, anyway, we also need to look at what happens when we click the remove or I watched it button. So we go back up to the form for that. And so here, when you click on one of the list item buttons, the submit button, it brings you to, remember, it's inside of a form. When you click the submit, it's going to do whatever you tell it in the action. So it's going to go to the cross-off route. So if we go back to that, we find that slash cross-off. Here it is. All right. It pulls the looks like it's grabbing the ID from that movie. Let's see where that's coming from. Okay. So we have a hidden input here that is grabbing the movie ID. Okay. So why would it need to use the movie ID for in this case? What happens when we click I watched it? It needs to find the record in the database that we want to mark as watched. Can we go by name? Well, the name doesn't necessarily have to be unique. We didn't set it up that way, but the ID does. So the best way to reference a single record is by ID. So in the loop that builds the ordered list, or actually it's an unordered list, in each list item we're printing out the name of the movie, and then in hidden input field, we're putting the ID. So that gets sent to the cross-off form. And so if we look in here, go back to the front page, and let's open the inspector, F12. Let's find this list item. Okay, the first one, we look at the code. Inside the first list item, inside the form, we have, this one is for, hey, it worked. It created this hidden field, form field, called crossed off movie, and the value is 1001, and that's the ID of that movie. So when we click the I watched it, it'll pass this value in to the crossed off route. Alright, so it's grabbing that ID. I guess I have to turn word wrap back on so you can actually see that. So here in that hidden field, there's the movie ID. It's going to take that and send it to the cross-off route. And so if we go back here where the cross-off route is, it is pulling the value from that field on the form, that hidden field, and storing it in this variable, and then they use that variable down here. We have the if statement that checks that it actually exists in the database before. So right here they're saying, okay, look in the database and grab a record that has this ID and store that record in crossed off movie. And here we're saying if not crossed off movie. So what does that mean? So if here when we're creating this variable, if this returns or is unable to find a record, it'll set this to empty, I believe. And then, so that will be false if it doesn't find one. But here we're using the not operator, so that will change it to true. So this is saying if the movie is not crossed off, this is confusing. If the movie is not crossed off, or if there is no movie with that ID, so if we weren't able to find the movie with that ID, it'll say, go back to the home page with this query parameter. So error will equal attempt to watch a movie unknown to the database, and that'll go on the home page. Okay, so let's double check that so you can see it all the way through. So let's change this ID to something we know is not in there. Okay, and then when we click it, we should get that error. Attempt to watch a movie unknown to this database. Okay, so that's why that's there. And then if this is true, so if it does find one, that'll convert it to false, and then it'll skip this return. Remember, as soon as a function hits a return statement, it stops running. So if it gets in here, none of the rest of this code will run. So if we do have one, then we're ready to cross it off. So we can access the object from this reference. We can change its watched field value from whatever it is to true. Then now that we have this record, we need to add it to the session, right? So we've created, with Python, we've edited the record, And by adding it to the session, we're ready to commit it to the database, and it will do an insert statement for that. And I'm wondering how smart this object relational mapper is, if it'll just do an update or if it'll actually add the record in. Because it may delete the existing record, and well, we'll see. It'll show us. Okay. And then it'll show you which one you crossed off. Okay. So db.session.commit. So let's cross one off so we can see that. So let's fix this. All right. Let's cross off Borat. First, let's clear the terminal so we can see. Get in here. There's no clear. There's just reset and clear. Okay, so we'll stop the server, clear the terminal, and then we'll start the server again. Okay, and so here is where we're going to look for the SQL when we run this, or when we click it. So click I watched it. Okay, and so a lot of stuff happened. Okay, so it says select the database. This is all just setting it up to insert. No. Here it is. Update movie. So update the movie table, and we're going to set the watched value to true or 1. Okay. This right here is saying update movie set, and then here we have these percents. These are variable references accessing value from a dictionary of key value pairs. And so here it says percent watched, that's going to put 1 in there, and then here it says where movie ID equals percent movie ID, it's going to set the movie ID there. In this case it's 1004 for Borat. And then so this command is how you update records in the database. Oops. Start the server back up. I messed it up. Okay, so let's go to the database and try doing this ourselves. So first, let's take a look at the records. So before, Borat was not marked as watched. Now it is. And so let's see if we can update the movie Rubber. Actually, no. Let's update the Aeronauts rating from null to an integer. So we can do Control-Shift-V to put in that query I copied out of the debug output from the database in the web server. And then we can go in and replace these. We wanted to set, we're going to do set rating to 4. That doesn't matter right now. Okay, and then we need to, in the where, so this filters the records down, is what a where clause does. And so we only want to set the rating to 4 where the ID is 1003. All right, and then just to be consistent. You can reference your fields by table.field. So in this case, the movie table, rating field, movie table, ID field. Okay, don't forget your semicolon for an SQL command. It says, okay, nothing broke. Let's pull it up. So now Aeronauts has a rating of 4. So you can see how the object relational mapper works. It takes whatever you do with the objects and then translates it into SQL for you to manipulate the database. So it takes out a huge step of manually handling that. Makes you more efficient in creating a web app. Okay. So, oh, I talked too much, so we'll have to continue on next time. Let me kind of remind myself how far we got. Oh, we were just seeing how the app works from walkthrough 7. We haven't done any of the tasks for that, so we'll do that next. So I'll leave it here for walkthrough. All right. You guys have a good day. Don't forget to email me if you are stuck, or if you haven't turned in more than one assignment. You definitely need to email me. I want you to pass the class. I don't want you to be stuck. And if you haven't met with me for advising and you are an IT programming major or an IT web technology major, you need to meet with me for an advisor meeting. So just shoot me an email and we can set that up. All right. You folks have a good day, and I'll see you next week.